Oh yeah, no, yeah, tells you. Yeah, so now we are recording. Obviously, we'll cut some scenes and then we'll see how it looks like at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so maybe we start by you saying who you are. So, hi, Danny.
I think.
Who are you? Yeah, what do you do? Because I think like people are interested in knowing like why are you here? What do you do? What do you do for like the world, especially within the Android space?
Okay. So hi Frank, hi everyone there.
Hi.
I'm Danny. I'm here in Berlin, Germany. I'm an Android developer. Right now working for SoundCloud. I'm in a SoundCloud office right now. Working on a SoundCloud app. And before I worked on apps like Groupon, eBay, MTV. So I've been in the Android community for some time, doing Java, doing Kotlin, and yeah. And I met you at DroidCon Kenya, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you started from Eclipse.
Oh, I definitely use Eclipse. I remember a
Okay,
time when
cool.
Eclipse was a good thing.
Yeah. So my name is Frank. I also am an Android developer currently. I build software that is for stuff mobile. Yeah, and apart from that, met Danny at DroidCon Kenya. That is what 2018, and then again in 2019 in Berlin. And so it's like, yeah, it's like 2 years. So only this year I think it's because of COVID, so you're not going to meet. So unfortunately. Yeah, but yeah, so technically, and we also do a lot of stuff around the community there. So we with Android 2.4 obviously and Kotlin. So today the biggest thing that has been happening within the Android space, Danny, has been guys talking about COVID and controlling it, and and all these apps that are being built. So specifically today, the conversation I guess is around two things. Um, how can we, as two people, that is you and me, we are here, we want to build these apps, we want to make uh, different things, like how can we ensure that different people benefit from this? So then there are these apps that were released. So Google released, I think it was called exposure notifications, and then they have a sample app on Android, on GitHub. And so one of the things that we want to look at today is, if you're starting out in Android development, how can you take the existing app that's there already, and then how can you build it? And then you're just going to go through it, and obviously with the help of Dan, you're just going to go and talk about what's what's the thing, what are the best practices, what are those things that you can learn from these applications themselves, and how can you have this app actually running on an emulator or on a device. So without further ado, I think we will start off. Dan, you can, I think this is the link that you're going to look at today, right? This exposure notifications using tech. I'm not wrong, Danny, right?
Yeah, I think this is the one we could have a look at. So when you just search for exposure notifications, you will end up there. It's something that Google and Apple built together. So maybe let's, while we look at this, so what's the whole idea behind this, right? So like with the whole COVID-19 thing, you want to track people who are infected, and you need to track every single person that you had contact with. And so the idea came, let's use an app. And some Asian countries already did something like this, based more on like watching their telecommunication, but this will not work in every country. So the idea was, let's make an actually API, and that's what Apple and Google put together. So today we want to look at the Android version of it. The idea is that your phone will emit something, and then every phone around you will do the same, and then they track each other. And then if one of them gets infected, it will look like, hey, whom did I had contact in the last week or so? And then we have this combined data, and then we might be able to track like the whole chain. And the API, I think, just right now it's just available for the government agencies. But the document actually says that there is planned a second phase where will they open this to the public. So this will be part of Android. This will be part of iOS, and then everybody can use it, not only certified agencies. I guess they check this on the Play Store level for now.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So the link is here. It will be obviously shared. where you can get it. Well, as Danny said, you can just like search for exposure notifications and you can get it. And there are all these things that they're talking about. I know like the biggest thing right now is on privacy. So yeah, they also touch on that, especially I think from Android 10 going forward. That has been like the talk, like, hey, we are really keen on like your privacy, and so they actually give you all these options there. And so this is the landing page on exposure notifications where they talk about it, the way Dan you're saying Apple and Google. So, but then what you're interested in is this thing here. This is uh, the reference design that they're talking about, and this is the link. I think it leads us back to this part here, as you can see. So that's the one, and then now this is the whole page. So I have a different way of looking at such kind of reference. I guess it's like a reference app, and not like, I wouldn't say like a library, but it's like a implementing the exposure notification API. Yes, cool. So if so this is like so there's a blog about it. There's all this. So here's my question, Danny. When let's say you land on a project like this, and we have such kind of apps on GitHub, what's probably the thing that usually interests you now that you're here? Is it quickly play around with it, or is there something specific that you look at before you start, let's say, writing this code or working with this code or looking at that code? Is there something that you start looking at specifically, or do you just like go, what is it, fork, clone, downloads, star, watch? What are the things that you do? Probably.
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, normally I actually do most thing in the actually code, but if I have like a GitHub link like this, I would briefly look at the README, right? So scroll down. So there's normally like a short description what this thing is doing. I think it's always helpful just to look over those. Anything interesting? I think where it's really important, if you would be on a project like this, this is a new API, so you cannot Google for how to use this and go to Stack Overflow, because this is a new thing. And actually, the whole API documentation is a PDF that you have to download from Google. This is not part of like the well-maintained tech writer thing as we know it, right? So this, I think, where it's really helpful to look at the actually reference design, because Google, this is like, it shows you how to use the thing. So it's actually much more important than just reading API description. So I think if you have something like this, is perfect, right? So I think we should just check it out.
Okay.
Really,
no problem. Yeah. So like, okay. So what I prefer to do when I get a project like this is, so obviously, if it's something that is interesting, I'll definitely give them a star. So I normally have two ways: either I'll star them now or later. But I think because this is like a reference for the other exposure notifications Android apps that are being built on top of this, I prefer to star. Occasionally, I love to fork because I've noticed something with Google stuff. So you get a very cool project. After 3, 4, 5 months down the road, you're like, yeah, I remember there's that project. Then you come back to GitHub, it's being, what's the right word that they use? It's like they stopped doing updates to it, then they archive it. Or there are some projects that are totally deleted. And I'm like, I remember there was this project, there was this, like I remember interacting with it. And so normally I would like to doing the fork, but I guess we'll do that later. But I can just do the fork because I know you're going to make some changes and you're probably going to use this there. And so they have one branch. I usually check this most of the time. So I've seen they only have one. So that's fine. They're pushing to the develop one. So I will do this here. Then once it comes up, I now prefer to clone from here. Now,
that's so interesting. I hardly clone, but like, yeah, it's like a kind of like keep the bookmarks. It's actually really interesting because my problem with forks is always like, then I don't look at this. I normally fork if I want to contribute because that's the way you can contribute, right, to open source. But then I don't open it for a while. Then I go back and then I have like this fork from like a year ago, which is so far from where the project is now. It's always like annoys me. But yeah, it's a very way of seeing it.
Yeah, exactly. So then I'd obviously do this. So let's play around with that. Android Studio has a very faster way. So I'll just like say version. So there's these two options that I kept on laughing when I looked at that. So normally I don't normally use this option. Yeah, okay, cool. So normally what happens is I've seen guys who'd go do like download, have a zip file, extract, then import. But because I'd want to actually play around with the whole Android Studio, I would prefer to just like get it from version control. I would pull my GitHub there. So let me get my stuff to be more. Let me see if I can get a folder where I can put it. So I normally like storing my work on code. So that is like on desktop code.
I just wanted to ask this, where do you
And
normally store like your projects? I have like normal one folder that's called dev or so, where all my GitHub projects are. How do you organize it?
okay, so I do this. So I have a bunch of I have a bunch of folders. So on my desktop, I go to my desktop and I'm on Windows. I'm a fan of Windows. So I'll have a folder called code. And so in code, depending on what I'm working on. So I like to arrange my work. I really like because like I think like like the more you start interacting with this so many things, and there's some kids I'm mentoring and I'm currently doing some stuff with C++, especially on the optimization part. So you would find that things can get really confusing. And so I prefer to arrange my work like this. So if there's a specific project I'm working with, I would put it there. So then you'd find this is a music app that I'm working on. This is all the work to do with Kotlin. This is all my GitHub. Those cool GitHub projects that I probably encounter, I definitely prefer to put them here. And so because I know, Danny, we're about to do like this series of a bunch of stuff to do with contact tracing, I would actually come. This is something I'm just getting right now, so I'll call it uh, contact tracing. So this is me. This is that. And so, for instance, you see, like once I do that, then once I have it here, I'm good. So then I'll come back to here and just like literally just like reference it because I know where it is. If I go to code,
That's a good one.
and then yeah, and then I come back to contact tracing, which is supposed to be here. Oh yeah, this is the other thing with Android Studio. It won't automatically refresh. You have to leave, come back again, and then I do this. Then I'll find it. Yeah.
One reason why I
Uh,
definitely want one folder for all the code, which you kind of also have here. So don't mix it with other documents or so. So very often you have like a virus scanner on your system, and
yeah.
it will go crazy if you start building because it's creating jar files, which the virus scanner at the same time will start extracting again.
Mhm.
And then indexing will come up. So it's good to have this one folder where we don't put any other documents, it's just code from GitHub, and this you can then exclude in your virus scanner.
Okay, yeah. So for me, it's this one now. So it's this. I think this is the only folder that's never scanned. If I accidentally put something bad here, we messed up.
Exactly.
So we messed up.
Therefore,
So
it's
this
really
is
helpful in terms of performance. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I'll work with this. So then we'll call this Google Explorer. And then I'll do that, and then I'll create that folder, and I'm good to go. And I can put my URL, I think, because I accidentally made that thing, and then I will paste it there, and I will clone it. And I think I will not update my Android Studio right now. I'll ignore this event unless it's a major life-changing one. I will not do it.
What version of
And
Android
then
Studio are you on normally? Are you on Canary or do you like stable?
yeah, so I used to be on Canary until I started this software development job. And then, you know, the way like everyone in the organization needs to have this common one. So you can't be on Canary and you're like 4 or 5 steps ahead, the other guys are behind. And then they're wondering, what feature is that you're talking about? We don't have it. And so your things just start looking weird and messed up all the time. So that's why I just prefer to have it on stable. My friends have started making fun of me. They're like, oh yeah, why are you celebrating 4.0? I was like, because it's here now. Yeah, so that's the thing. So what people can't see maybe is that there's some indexing going on down here. All this, and I think it's just a normal thing. Um, my Android Studio is fairly optimized better, but let me not speak before drama starts to happen. So yeah, so it is I guess it's really enough EU. Mine won't take that much of a while. But as you're talking about it, there's this whole structure that happens here. There's the README. I hardly ever like editing that unless it's something that I'm playing around with. But once it finishes, yeah, this is the one that spends a lot of time. our Gradle build. But as this is going on, let's see, should finish in a second. Yeah. So these are the ones that are here. Let's see. Okay, so let me explain also why I prefer doing it this way. It's sort of like if I want to also contribute to maybe this project, because I've seen there's some libraries that I like using, and they were on Java, and even the example apps are on Java. So I've seen like a very easy way of me also to get to start. Then I was also wondering about how do I start committing to all these open source projects and projects or open source ones for that matter. What I did was I would prefer to update. So I would send this sort of like a request and tell them, hey, I've changed your stuff to like Kotlin and it runs very well. And I found it really easy because then these guys would really accept it so quickly, which was something really amazing for me. If you ask me, it was really something really amazing for me. So yeah, so that's the thing that I saw. I think we are having, is it white on your side also? Or can you can see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, with the Android Studio on. Okay, cool. So yeah, so as we are waiting for Gradle to build.
I thought your Android Studio is highly optimized.
Yeah, I'm like, what the hell's happening? Like at the very minute. This is the problem with doing like a live example, because they're not oh yeah, okay, there it is. When it finishes downloading all the things, it will work.
Yeah, maybe we can. For those who are really new to Android, so what's happening right now? So Gradle is basically downloading everything that this project needs. Like the cool thing with Gradle is it comes with the minimum. Like, so normally there is this Gradle folder in GitHub, and it contains for Windows and for Linux and Mac, like the Gradle binary, so that you can build it from command line without having Gradle installed, which is amazing and very different, I think, from other tools, like maybe not so that you need to pre-install. But then everything that it needs, except for this 1 megabyte is in the project, it will basically now download, right? It's its own dependencies, the dependencies for the project, because it had no idea what this project is about. All it knows it's a Gradle project, and it's, I think, a really cool thing about Gradle, although people complain about it a lot, but I think compared to what we had before, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And so even they can see it there. It's like it has to download all of those things that it's using. And maybe so there's this thing I've seen here. So as Gradle is building, they have all these links also where they talk about the various items, I guess so. So these are like, I think they're PDFs that are put here. The FAQs where I think you're talking about when someone passes. But I think all of these things, if someone reads about them, is, let me say, this whole blog and this document here, technically summarized. This is not like expounding on it now, on all of this specific one. And so I know there are all these questions on privacy. I think recently I was watching, I don't know whether it was Al Jazeera or Canal Plus. They're talking about the whole privacy question that now comes into place when people start talking about, oh yeah, so contact tracing, how is it working? Does that mean that people can spy on me? What does that mean? So, all those best things. And so maybe even as this is building, Danny, there's another best practice where if you're not using your device, for instance, it's always best for you to boot up your emulator and have it running somewhere before this, just to make it faster. I don't know if you use your emulator at your place of work or you test on
I actually use emulator a lot. Yeah. Maybe we can download the emulator. Yeah, start already. Maybe we can quickly think about, like, so if you, let's imagine you would be in a project like this and you have to build it, right? Why should you use the Google thing? And then privacy is one reason. So I'm in Germany and people would not use the app as it's not privacy aware. There were a lot of discussions here, and basically two things, and they're both is like really nice with the Google one. One is, where do you store all these data, which is also something you can think in your project. And there were some countries who wanted to store all this data, if they use Google API or not, on the server side. There's one server, all the data goes there from all the users. And in Germany, for example, they want to start like this, and then discussions came, no, don't do this, no one will use the app. Because this server is the one that you want to hack, right? The way Germany, for example, wants to do this now is it is just peer-to-peer. So the device will store all this data locally of every device that you met during the day, and only if it's needed. So if you say, "Hey, I got sick," then it will transmit to the server, and then the server will do the matching. Like this is like an interesting thing. And then what I really like, and this is in the FAQ of the Google samples. So the device is basically transmitting something, right? Hey, I'm Frank, I'm Frank, I'm Frank, like all the time. But I think every 15 minutes or so, this ID is changing. So then you're Frank 1, and then you're Frank 2, or whatever, right? It's just a random number. So you can't track someone during the whole day, which is something people are really afraid of. And it's something, if you ever have to build something like this, people don't want to be tracked. Like, because if you have the data where someone moved like the whole day, you can figure out where he works, where he lives. Like, it's very easy to trace these things back. So I think it's a very clever way of like continuously changing an ID. And the phone is the only one knowing that like Frank 1, 2, 3 are actually the same person, right?
Yeah, it's true. So what's actually the reason why my graduate is taking a while, and this is probably something that sometimes guys can get frustrated about, is I've seen like Google projects can get really huge. And so what has been happening is it's just downloading. And so this is mostly on now on that, like, what's the internet speed I'm working on, how many dependencies are there that things need to be downloaded on. And I guess this is because we're running it for the very first time. And as you can see below here, it's been 7 minutes. I guess we should like sleep and then we wake up again and yeah. So let's see. I think the best thing is we can just wait for it.
It's actually something I should always keep in mind. I had this when, like, sometimes you head to the airport or some place where you don't have internet, and then you just clone this project, everything fine, I can work in the plane or on the train. And then you realize, damn, I didn't open an Android Studio. So it did not download all these dependencies, and the project's completely useless because you can't do anything. So the first time running this is really important. And then you can go to like offline mode or whatever, but like you really need to do this first run to get all the dependencies right. And don't forget.
And so there's this route, and so that's a very good point. There's this, someone else might say, why don't I just come and, for instance, come and just download it as a zip file. You know, I have a plugin that directly opens in IntelliJ. I don't want to use it, but it clones directly in IntelliJ. Like it will just like open it on Android Studio. I prefer this model because, again, as I say, I have all these built-in plugins like Git and stuff. So I just prefer to have Android Studio is really powerful. Like that's my experience in terms of like IDEs, especially for developing Android applications. And so I like the way I can add specific plugins or make specific plugins. Like right now, there's one I'm making for README, and it's out. We'll probably talk about that. But it's mostly, I like the way it brings everything together, and I don't need to like start struggling and saying, let me use that other thing and then use that other thing. So we are waiting for it. It's now on. Wait, let's see. We'll sleep and probably wake up. I'm seeing my friends getting cold.
Nobody look at the files that we see on the left side, right? Just to like, hey, what is a typical Android project?
Okay, cool. So on this we have. Okay, so I think it's like.
Now detected it's an Android project. See your project view, which brings me to the first question: are you using the Android view that's usually there, or are you using a project view? I think every developer has like their thing.
Okay, so now interesting thing happened here. I'm normally a fan of, I prefer to start off with a project view, but I've seen it automatically change. So then here I can just like come here and change the project view there. And so sometimes I've seen some people who get frustrated. And so let me just give a side note that what's happening now is it's now indexing everything now, and then it will be done in a few. But then I prefer to use this project view. And the reason why I think, I love the project view for a specific reason. I shift to Android. I guess I've been using the project view because I think recently I started playing around with like Flutter and just like seeing the way it works. And I saw that if I move here, there's some things that I probably end up not seeing when I'm here. And so if I'm dealing with things to do with, I want to see the way the whole project looks like, from things.
I think
to be
this
like
big difference for those who don't know the project view is like you literally see the folders as they are, while the Android view, for example, it combines like the test and the source into one thing. And also there's
exactly,
a module sometimes.
Exactly. And so if I want to like totally focus on a specific thing, I just go back to Android. Though there's a time I think there's this application that I encountered that had I think the way the guy arranged his resources, you couldn't view them within the Android. When you move to the Android view, you couldn't see them. But then when you go to the project one, he had put them outside. I don't know how he had done it, but he had sort of like attached other extra asset files outside, and so he would like refer to them. I guess it was like a local project or something like that. And I was like, oh, okay, why not just like put them together there and just like focus, because you have to do the Android one. So so once this
if you look on a project, so this for me like for example, I review a lot of like submissions for like code reviews for people applying at companies that I work on. So if you present it on a project that you don't know, what is the first thing that you normally do? I'm curious. Like, what are the first files you open? Are you looking at the structure? Are you open specific files? Like, what is your way of looking at the project?
No, for me, the first thing I do is I'm interested in the structure. And maybe it's because I have this bias of understanding the way, let me understand the way everything works from like on this very general perspective. And then I go to the specifics. So then I'll be interested in knowing, okay, so what's, I guess, following the decay rate. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. We'll see what that's happened. No, let me not update that fast.
Yeah, we're not updating anymore.
Yeah, we're not updating. Yeah. So my interest is mostly on the structure, Danny. And I think there are people who prefer to quickly jump and just go to like, yeah, what's this file running? But I think for me, my interest is mostly on the way it looks like. And then before I do anything, I was like modifying or anything like that, my first instinct is always to run the app and see, can I actually run that example up on my device?
Yeah. Let's do this. I normally don't do this. I have a very similar approach, but yeah, let's maybe start running it, or while we're waiting, we can keep discussing there.
Yeah, okay, cool. So the emulator is open, as we say, it is already running, so there it is. And so I will just like run that, and as it is building, we can probably now.
You're using quite a recent emulator, right? I see like API 28.
So mine is, I think, what am I using? It's a pix. Oh yeah, so this is what I do. I attach. I usually prefer to say this is my name. And this is the name of the device. So that's my naming convention for the emulator. So my name, the name of the device, plus the name of the device, the coming model. So you can find like if it's a Nokia 8 or something, and then it's the Pixel 3a, and then what's the API level, the largest API level that it's supported. And so that's like API 28. And so if I go lower, you'll see those values changing all the time. So that's my way of doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I have like not a strict naming convention, but one thing definitely, maybe a tip thing that I always do is like I normally test on a very small device with a very low API level. So first, this shows you bugs if you're not having the latest one. But also, like if you have a slower, like a lower resolution device, like I normally do like a Nexus 5X or something, it will not use as many resources if you would run it on a Pixel or even a tablet. It will use all of your computer, and the lower, I mean, it's fine for testing it often. And you see like UI issues very easily.
Okay. Something interesting there. And also, what's your like SDK? Do you have like all the SDKs from like 1.0, or do you cut off at a specific point for you? Especially with the
like an Android Studio, which one I pick? Like
exactly. And like I'm asking all these questions because this is building right now.
Yeah, normally, I don't know, it's the latest. I always try definitely to have the latest. And then there are some definitely have the lowest that you support, like 25 or 26, for example, for our project. And then, to be honest, I only have the ones in between if I need to test something on those devices. Because I get a bug, for example, or I see a crash that's happening on a certain API level. So in the end, I will sum up, right? But I start normally with like a minimum and maximum thing.
Okay. Cool. So this is going to be ready in a few. They keep on I'm using this plugin called Keep Promoter. So it keeps on telling me you need to use this shortcut and then use this other shortcut. Yeah. Obviously, they're not sort of advertisement for this.
You know what? Like maybe you can give tips on the emulator where we see the emulator. So my thing that was like life changing for me is when someone told me you can take an APK and you can drag and drop to the emulator.
Okay, so then this one.
You don't do ADB install or use Android Studio. If you have your APK already, you can just drag and drop it there, and it's actually installed.
Like over here, right? So let me see if you can get that.
If you have some APK somewhere, like
yeah, let me see if I have an APK somewhere. Maybe we could try that tip.
No, just as like one thing. Like, what is your UFX? Any tips of like using the emulator or so?
Yeah. So one thing is, apart from the fact that I always leave it like running. Two is when I'm configuring it. There are people who, let's say, look at the RAM, the capacity that you have. I think most people imagine that the emulator would exist outside of the resources that exist within the computers. And so you need to understand that as the emulator is going to be running, Android Studio is also running. And like right now, we have Android Studio running, emulator running, and then you have Chrome running. And then, so all those things are like the totality of the resources. So if you have 8 GB of RAM and you have your emulator set at like 4 GB, and then now you see you still have your Android Studio to run, and then you have Chrome to run, and then you still have all those things to run. So I have seen that one of the things that I try and do is I manage the sizes of the device that I use based on the emulator. So normally I try to ensure that it's not more than half. Just as the thing. So currently I'm on 16 GB. I will not put it at 8 GB. And also, yeah, the other thing is because again I'm based in like here in Nairobi. So the best thing is always most people will not have an 8 GB RAM device playing around with that thing. So now it's up. It's running. Again, I prefer to test it out and see if it's working. It's like, oh, cool. This is fine. Let's say get started. Just interact with it for some time. Rely on sharing. I will turn it on, and then we'll see how this one will work.
Uses Google Play services. I guess we can tell.
Yeah. So it says update, so it needs me. Okay, now I'll need to update like everything clearly.
This is actually an interesting thing. So probably, the things that Google and Apple build, so at least with Google build, is probably they put it in the Play services, and that's why the app needs a specific version. I can imagine.
Yeah, exactly. So let's see if because I do have the Play Store. That's the funny part is I do actually have Play here. Where is it? I can't find it. Oh, wait. No, I can't sign in. I can't sign in. Oh, yeah. So the place I'll have to. Oh my God, what is happening today? Okay. Anyway, it says it wants me to have a Play Store. Where is the Play Store? Oh my God. Okay. So now we have a problem. So wait. So here's the sample one. If we run it, it tells us we need a Play Store. Okay. And then turn on.
I mean, worst case say not now, and we test it about, right? I think this is just for the notification part.
Okay, cool. So we can do this. Let's try it again. It started. Not now.
So we're in the app, it looks like.
So there's this exposures, notify others, and debug.
Oh, that's interesting. Can you go to debug? No, I'm curious. I'm a developer. What's on debug?
Snapshot, exposure, notifications, API master. Okay.
So these are things developers do a lot, right? They have somewhere, like from my experience, have somewhere like a debug or developer screen. Like, I guess this is like a reference, so that is why it's so obvious in the bot navigation. But I know a lot of apps that have them actually hidden. And then there are multiple ways you could, for example, only have them in debug, or only have them right now on your alpha builds or something, but not on the production builds. But I've also seen apps that actually have them always in the code. So if a developer sees like an issue, it can go to some developer menu to find out more, like specific versions, and I don't know, make snapshots of something. So you have like any you've seen something like this? For example, I know one app that I once saw, it's not there anymore, but you could dial a specific code on your phone, and then a developer mode would come up, which is a very interesting way of, and then others do like, I don't know, like developer mode, like 10 times pressing something on like icon. You need to have you might play in the app and then 10 times clicking, or 2 fingers press I've seen, or long press for 10 seconds somewhere in like a hidden corner. So things that are hard to find, but they're often actually there, which is very interesting.
Yeah, so I think for me, I've interacted mostly with them with like games, and that's why like sometimes it's fun when you try and discover. With games, I find it's easier. You either do some certain things, because there's one where if you try and take a screenshot in between the game, it like literally launches the frame rate, starts telling you all those crazy statistics that you can't be interested in as a developer. And I was like, whoa, okay, that's accidental and interesting, and that's how I figured it out. And it was so easy, like you just do the screenshot, it gives you that. You do another screenshot, it disappears. That's the one that I saw. I don't know how they actually implemented, but I've seen mostly with games. With apps, I guess now I should actually be more aware of this. That play around with some of them a bit more. That's going to be something I'm going to do when I'm free. Yeah. So, so they say exposure notifications API master. If I enable that, it tells me it needs. So let me make the screen bigger. In a second, it will be. There it is. Okay. So yeah. So when I do that, obviously because it needs the Play Store to be updated. That's the thing. I think because it's not yet there, it won't work. And then if I say notify the app that you have been exposed, so I can say add a test exposure. And then someone you are near has tested positive for COVID.
Yeah, this is nice. Testing like notifications. They're so hard to send like a test notification to someone. So having something in your device like this so that you can test things is easy.
Yeah.
Better than doing like AD. Normally I do like ADB commands, and I can say an ADB broadcast to some broadcast receiver. But this is like have a button in the debug menu. This is perfect, right?
That just like does the same thing.
For example, I used to have one just crash the app, which is like I can see if your Crashlytics or whatever is working.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So that. And then matching, manually get and provide keys locally. So I can provide keys and maybe you can add some numbers. Oh yeah, won't run. Oh yeah, so this ones won't run unless you update our stuff. So these are the provide the keys. These are the keys that you can put, temporary exposure key.
Oh wow, that's very technical.
So let's start here. So this is like input is that. Temporary exposure key, they've not given us that. Okay, then that. Okay. So here's where I ask. Maybe my question would be, how are you supposed to know the interval number? Do you press like 01 or something? Or?
I guess this is a debug menu, so this is for the developer who actually plays with this and wants to test something. So I think that's probably fine.
Okay.
I guess you look at this at some point when you look deeper into the API.
Okay, cool. And then public, and then there's that, and then verification, and then they test the verification. Okay. Oh, so this is like providing the keys. Provide to API, and then I say provide. Error bad single input. Make sure all fields are provided.
So this is like they put like a lot of effort into this developer menu. Like normally they're not this extensive.
Yeah. So then I'll say provide to API. I don't know. I just put like random numbers past. Just say
putting an API token here is also like a nice way of it. Yeah. For example, I used to have debug menus, for example, switching between staging and my production server, or like overriding some sort of authentication token or something, right? It's like a nice way of doing this.
Exactly. So I have yes, it is a developer menu. I do not deny it, but I have a problem with this part. I feel like as someone who is starting to use it for the first time, should I like there's that thing where if I have a blank thing like that, yes, it says temporary exposure key, but why not tell me like it should take a certain format? Or is it the assumption is that by the time I'm coming to do this temporary exposure key, my understanding is I already know what a temporary exposure key looks like, or I'm building it from somewhere else. Because I'm just seeing on this page, and for us to get here, we just like clicked through and then we came here and we saw provide a key. And so the input method is single and a file. Obviously a file, I'm imagining you need to, yes, you're uploading. Provide to API, okay, fine. But then if it's like I'm inputting it manually, I have scan a QR code, temporary exposure key.
You know,
I don't know what
yeah, I
else.
think you're right, because because you said the first thing that you always do with an app is run it.
Yes.
I think what the developer of this thought is that the first thing you do is read all the API and look at the code. So I think and although this is like a developer focused thing, it's like interesting, right? Like we always expect people to read the manual first, but they don't.
Yeah.
They just jump in and try to play around with it. I think this is a good one.
Exactly. Like for me, I'll tell you the truth. If let's say even right now, like you get this very cool project and someone is making noise about it, the first thing I have to be sure of is before I can invest a lot of time in looking at the API is do they have a sample app? And then that sample app is can I run it? And then if I can run it, do I understand how it's working? Like even on a very top level sort of thing. And so once I understand a very top level thing, then my next thing is okay, cool. So I understand a very top level. Now let's get to the specifics. Like, cool. So then they have this API, then I can go and spend time on the API. First of all, it's not in the API. It's like on Android first. What can I modify? Can I come and play around with things? Are things breaking or not breaking? And once I understand it, then now I go and sit on the API. I'm like, okay, so this is what, because right now, I'll tell you the truth. When I go and look at the API right now, I will not understand what a rolling period is. So that means I will need to sit down first with just reading and understanding this whole thing first before I even start on touching anything to do with the app. Anyway, that's the way I prefer to do things. I prefer to play around with the app first. I have it running on my device, and then now I go back and say, okay, cool. Now let's look at your API. Let's look at your library and how it can be implemented in my project. If I can't run it on your sample app, if I can't run your sample app and modify your sample app, oh well, I'm struggling. So that's me anyway. Yeah. So
can you go to transmission risk level? I'm just curious. Is this also an edit field?
Where? Here.
Transmission risk level above.
Yeah, there it's they don't
just an input, right? Level. I would expect like some kind of like chooser, like there's probably like 9 levels, right? There must be
exactly
right this here.
Exactly. And then like they so like even explain it to you, like if it's 1 is this, 2 is this, 3 is this. It's like that, those things. That's what I mean. And even things like these are like it's like it looks really good, like it's really done well. Like let especially this part where the developer can come and put all of these things copied. So but then I'm trying to understand, like here, I'm copying. It's literally, it says, and this is me not even reading it. It's like I'm just coming here and I'm like, okay, wait. When using the single option above, this app creates diagnosis key field sign is random. To use this,
the info is there, but it's right at the bottom. I mean, this you can write in a better way. Maybe it's we got the developer part. Let's see what the
exactly. Yeah, so let's go back. So this is that matching, and then there was provide from server, background job to provide test diagnosis. So if I click that and feed as a background job, okay, fine, that's fine. I think we ran app was built to default to your Horizon default card. Okay, that's fine. So then there was the notify others. Obviously it won't work because of us. Oh, this is for reference. Okay, and then exposures. Let's see. That. Oh yeah, so this is what we just did right now. I think this is from others in the past, maybe. And this is possible. This is like right now what we need. And so we can check that and see what it will tell us.
Yes.
Actual copy to be provided. You are near someone 0 days ago, shared positive. This person's test result was verified. This is
actually pretty nice for like a simple, like it could have been an ugly dialogue. They could have put it in there. So someone put some
exactly. And I'm imagining, I'm seeing like a whole because I think I've seen some stuff with mostly iOS devices where they have this thing to do with
And
very
even
nice.
like a ripple effect. There was even like focus color. So like it's like nice because especially when you build like a reference app, if you're like an API designer or something, like if you provide an API for a company and you need to sell this, a lot of developers will just copy this, rename it, leave everything as it is, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's why they provide some things that really made nice, and then some things like the watermark they put there to make sure that you're not just copying it.
Exactly. Exactly. Very true. Yeah. Exactly. So verified and then saved to this app, and you can access it at any time. So this report is being saved here. So this sample public health app received info this. So that means actual copy to be provided. So I don't know whether this means that it's sent to the public health authority or this is verified sample public health app received.
I mean,
Oh
as
yeah.
you knew someone who was, so you had a possible exposure, right? There were someone close to you who was verified as he had COVID-19.
Okay, so then I'll say done, and then now we have this. And so I would imagine.
Oh, the only thing that if I would expect, I would see this as a user. Like, I mean, yes, it's not well explained, maybe what an exposure is, but why not make it like red? This is the one thing. Hey, you might have met a person who got sick. Like, why not make it like with colors or something, right? And not have an info icon, have something like, you really need to read this.
Exactly, yeah. So that like, hey, and that's the other thing I'm seeing here. So you have like exposures on top over here, and so you sort of like and like it's a good point what you said. There's the whole conversation around what colors do also to people as you're building the app. So having this part put here as turn on exposure notifications, I'm imagining for someone who this would probably would be like, yeah, okay, it's possible. But if you put like a red, I'll be like, wait, what do you mean? I'll click
And
it like.
there's also no way to dismiss this, right? I mean, I don't know. I think at some point we have to look at the real apps that people are building. But I could imagine, like, I see this and I was in a park and I don't know, the exposure was like 5 seconds and it was outside, so probably the risk is low. But it will be different if you were in a restaurant for 5 hours and there might be a person there, and the exposure was, I don't know, for 1 hour. The risk is different, but only you know this because the phone will not know, maybe not know outside or inside, right? So maybe it would be nice to dismiss something and then to have others to like, oh, okay, what do I do? What do I do now, right? I think there should be like a link here. What do I have to do now? Call someone? Do I have to stay at home? The doctor?
Yeah, because these are like what he just says is that it was just shared. Received this info, report has been saved to this app, and you can access it at any time. And so I think maybe, and I'm just like trying to think on behalf of Google. Again, I was not part of making this, but then I would say, could it be that the reason why they're not telling you whether you can share this information or something like that is that it's mostly around privacy stuff, maybe? I don't know. I'm just thinking. Could it be that they're telling you that? Yeah.
Different countries will have different laws, and you will implement this in different ways. Yeah.
Exactly. So I mean, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe that's the plan when we start looking at the actual implementations of this. But I think this one sort of gives you that framework of how they would want you to get around with the API.
But something I think you can mind as an app developer, like have a clear user, like user need to know, do I need to do something now or not, right? Like, and this is not clear here. Like it is an info thing. Like, I don't know as a user, what can I do? What do we have to do, right?
Okay.
So if the user flow for me is not clear, the user actions. But
okay.
Let's look at
now. So the code now. That's the most interesting part is
so you said you look at the project structure first. So let's maybe do this. And then I explain you what I know.
Okay, so I would so this is the project structure itself. I don't know if you can see that, but this is the project structure, and from the project structure, I would just look at this and just know like, okay, cool. So everything is definitely going to happen here. These are the two things that I'm just going to be interested in: the app and the Gradle directories. And so once I see that's okay and the project built and it was running, I quickly shift now because I want to focus 100% on Android. So now we're on Android. Everyone when they open it, they'll see it like that. So then this is where now we go to not the test one, but now we look at all of this. So they have, wow, and then the resources file. So in all of this, my assumption is that they would probably be starting at home. And then
So one thing, although there's one thing that I would, or two things that I would check before I go to the project structure, but for me also checking project structure is one of the first things that I do in an app. What do you think about this project structure? So we see like packages here: common, debug, exposure, home, nearby, storage, util. What do you think about it? Like, what's your first impression?
So my first impression is, one is they've organized I like that they've put like, it's all like a separation of concerns, let me use that term, in that everything to do, I would expect that everything to deal with network is in that network directory. Everything to do with notify is in that notify directory. Same to the onboarding thing and the storage one. And I am so like a fan of this. There's the whole debate right now, or rather over the last couple of years, on all of this architecting Android applications, where some guys talk about let's go and just put like everything in one thing. I've interacted with an app like that, where someone I think had used some other people to make the app, and then it was given to me to sort of like try and do a change. And so I had a really hard time trying to figure out where is this thing, where is this other feature. And so I had to ask literally for extra days just to spend time understanding that project and where everything is. Had to restructure it to something that would at least make sense for if they decide to use some other developer down the line. They're like, okay, cool, awesome, this works well. We can actually use it going forward. So I'm actually a fan of this. And this is where now you have all of these different ways of people calling it. Then you have the whole conversations around MVVM, MVVI, MVI, MVC, M somethings. I call them M somethings nowadays. And you can pop up and have your own version of it and say, okay, probably not using an M something. I just put it like that. So that's my opinion about it. Yeah.
I think I definitely agree. So people used to do this on a very technical level, and I've seen like packages like activities and fragments, and then like things that belong together are spread all over, and this is not what you want, right? And so you should normally focus on like the use cases that your app is doing, and we can see here there is something about onboarding. All the stuff probably that was there is in the onboarding, right? And there is nearby notification. So I think this is well done. It is a bit mixed, so I'm not sure about the network and the utils ones. Like on the common, like these are tend to be the ones where you put like everything, like half the project and then there will be so many utils. And for me, like ideally, like packages should be also expected to modules, right? And at some point, I think it's a really good start, but at some point you have to keep this in mind. Hey, everything is in common. Like you have this one module, then there are two files like in the other one. So, exactly. But yeah, sometimes hard to avoid. Where do we put common things, right? Where do you put network things? Because both using them. But yeah, for me, as I would be a user looking at this, I don't care about network and debug, but yeah. It is kind of reflected. There was tabs, which was nearby, and there was onboarding. There was a debug tab, so I guess it's fine, right?
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So so now I would probably start with home. Though I know obviously because I was in the onboarding one. This is where everything starts, maybe. But I would imagine that here is where everything now starts to happen. And so
it's interesting. You clicked on the home fragment. Why didn't you click on activity?
So one thing is I want to check out the way it goes, because here's the thing I would expect. So if you ask me, I'm seeing this is a exposure notification activity, view model, and then a page adapter. And so I'm interested in saying I would imagine that this is where everything is starting from. I would even go to the onboarding.
So because you called home, that's why you think it's like the main thing?
Yes, exactly. That's my assumption, because again, I think it's like most people say like home deserves stuff.
Yeah, there's always like a home main fragment thing, right? Where like that's true.
Exactly. And then maybe from that home fragment, I would imagine that now the next thing I would be interested in, if it's very brief, for instance, is I would expect at some point here, which I'm seeing, is I would see the fragment. And then with this fragment, I'd want to see, okay, since I'm seeing a fragment here, is there some form of what is that? Then I come down and see is a tab layout. And so if you have a tab layout, my expectation is it's a layout. So then there's something that's feeding it with data, or like with information, that is. And so I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, cool. So if I don't see this page adapter here, my first place that I would probably go and look at when I don't see it here is I'd probably go to the util. If I didn't see it here.
Okay.
And this is like a bias, because I've actually guys who put them there and they say, most of the guys I've met, they call utils like, oh yeah, these are my utilities within Android. So they would put their adapters there, they put their things there. So there's like all these things that filled there. That's where I'd do. Unless if I don't find it there, I'd go to common.
Yeah, true. But I like your view, but I just see home. So I see like there's an activity, there's a model and a fragment. This look actually very clean, right? So like, okay, you use some kind of view model thing, right? There's like a fragment that makes sense. The page adapter makes sense because we've seen the UI, so that is adapter. I would wondering, what is the home fragment? Okay, home fragment, the one, probably an empty one, right? And then the page adapter has the actually 3 content things, so this kind of makes sense.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So now they get tab exposures, tab debug,
things.
And so what they're doing is now
this is actually Java code, right? Some of us might have not seen Java in a while, but this is how. And there's actually an issue. Hey, why did you not use the Kotlin? Because Kotlin is the way to go, right? And they actually had a very clever answer. They said, this is a reference application. And although, like, for example, Western Europe, and I'm not sure what's in Africa, there is a lot of Kotlin there. We have Kotlin, developers use Kotlin. But there are some regions where Kotlin has not caught up on the same level. They're just starting to look into Kotlin. And that even I think about, government agencies are writing this. There might be a guy that did Java for 15 years and never heard Kotlin in his life. So I think for them it makes sense to actually write this in Java, because the community who can read Java is much, much bigger, right? So they have a good reason to actually put this on Java.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we probably both of us would start with Kotlin, right? In a new project. But always think about your target audience, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah. So then there's this whole bit where there's the whole fragment one. There's obviously the notification activity. I look at the whole fragment, and I'll tell you the truth. I think I know there's the whole debate around Java, Kotlin, and yes, I do also write Kotlin code. I have seen that it's not that it's really that bad. That the way it's really verbose, I guess, with Java, and I would understand why they used it, is because you can actually see the way it's like. I feel like when I'm reading Java code, it's like I'm reading a sentence or something, a paragraph, and I can pick out like, oh yeah, so this is what this is doing. This is great.
There's no magic, you know exactly what's happening.
Exactly, there's no magic. Like it's really straightforward. So maybe you might find like this whole. How many lines are this? There are 137, I guess, minus the spacings, probably less than that. Probably could summarize this and have half this in Kotlin.
You looked at the line. What is like your maximum? Do you have a maximum of like lines you have per like profile for like fragment or something? Or like
I would say for not like a let's say for this, let's say you have like a home fragment of Java, for instance. Let's just work with Java. If I'm sitting down and I'm doing something like let me use something that's here. So let's say if I was writing this public void on view created, for instance, I would not want this thing to go. If it's going more than 50, 60 lines, it's hard to maintain. Because then if you make up, if I make an error with a full stop, it's going to be chaotic going through 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 lines of code just to find out where's that full stop. And so what I like to do is, if it's possible, I try and reduce them to that whole 50, 60 manageable sort of like lines, and then move on like that. I like what I learned even at my new work.
Okay, so it's basically what you see on your screen, right? Like that's your kind of.
Yes.
It's actually very interesting. So like very often you have like the width of that a lot of developers allow is something about 80, and this is like still comes from the old terminal times, because this was just the maximum that you could enter. This is also interesting. what I found interesting, what you're saying is like, so there are some developers who have read Clean Code, and I definitely recommend if you haven't read the book Clean Code, get it. It's like amazing. But Clean Code has very strict lines when it comes rules when it comes to lines. It would say one line method is perfect, 2 lines are okay, 2 lines are actually acceptable, 3 lines are questionable. So having like a method of 60 lines, if you work with someone who's really into clean code, you would really reject it. I've seen that. Like,
really like yeah.
So it's like,
no.
things down so that you know always what's happening, right? And like every method should do one thing. And for example, like doing something, have a try and catch is already 2 things. And this is like how clean code tries to
like reduce it further,
all the details, which is very hard to do with like setting up a fragment because it's UI code, especially in Java with a lot of verbosity. But it's still an interesting concept to keep in mind.
Exactly.
But yeah, for me, it's more like the file size. Like if something is larger than 250 lines, I have a problem because then there's too much going on here. Can we somehow start extracting this? Right? Because I mean, we're just opening random files, and we are understanding still pretty good what's going on here. And I think this should be the goal, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Very true. Very true. So then you have this whole bit going on here, and so that's like the home fragment, and then there's the page adapter, and then there's the whole notification activity. And so the other thing which is really important to talk about, how do you name your let me use the term files, and then you'll break it down further. How would you name? Yes, you have a directory called nearby, and you have a directory called network. But how would you? And I want to use the word files very loosely because it will touch on also all the other parts to do with the layout and stuff like that. So then, how would you name? What's the method that probably you would use to name? Because you see, like here, they go with an thing of home fragment page adapter, exposure notification view model, and then there's the notification activity. And then I think if you come to onboarding, it's the same thing: onboarding finish, onboarding permission, onboarding start. Is there a reason as to why they use this, or what method do you use as a software?
I mean, one thing I can tell you, and we're discussing this also a lot in our team. For example, what I don't like here first is like an onboarding. There's a package onboarding, then there's an onboarding fragment, and then there's and then if you have like more files, you repeat your package name all over. So I don't like this. But the point is, if you have like, let's assume this is a bit more complex, right? And then you have like 10 start fragments, because there's a start thing in like all of the screens. Like you have to have the package to know where you are, and especially in code reviews, I think sometimes that's hard because you need to know where you are. It's much easier in the IDE. So I'm always torn between like, should I repeat the package thing or not? Like, should I call it onboarding fragment and an onboarding package or not? One thing where it makes sense when you think about Android and modules is I like to call, for example, the layout of onboarding fragment. I would call onboarding _ fragment. And so some people do the other way around, fragment _ onboarding, so all the fragments. I mean, it depends on you. But if you're repeating it, they have the same name, and then you have different XML files with the same name, it gets easily confusing. You might at some point load the wrong XML file because in the module structure, the way Android loads things, so you have to be really careful. So the XML file should have a unique name, but you don't want a super long name for the fragment. So there's always this thing in between, which I haven't found the perfect solution for myself yet. So what do you think about it? Yeah. One thing that I don't use, I think the word home fragment. I normally call them actually main. Like the first thing is like the main activity or the main fragment.
Yeah.
Very often, and like you have like a home tab, which is the thing with the little home icon, right? So there's already content for me. Home is already, I don't know, like solid start or main, because this is the entrance of everything, and home is already confusing to me. What is home? It's like home the first tab, or is home the whole thing, right?
Okay. Makes sense. Okay, cool. So
naming is hardest. Like you can discuss about naming with developer for 5 minutes.
I don't know, but like I would sort of like agree with what they're doing, and the only thing is when it starts getting big, and maybe the reason why they're doing is like
I
they
think
have a
it's
large team.
yeah, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a large team and stuff. So maybe that's why they're doing it this way. But then there's something I've seen is, I think when you're touching on like the layouts and stuff, is when you go to the so they have the drawable ones, and then when you go to the layouts now, so you have all of these ones, and so maybe I don't know whether this is
the underscore and fragment underscore. So they sorted by technical terms here, and not by like they're not starting with onboarding fragments. So and both are totally valid. It's very interesting always to see one of the two styles, but definitely they have like an order here, which is nice, right?
Okay, cool. So let's see. One thing is there's that onboarding, and then there's the storage notify. So
before we go deeper, maybe because I said I have the first thing I do the app. I think the second thing for me is the project structure, what we just did. I think the two things that I do before when I open any project, like except for README, if there's README, looking at this, I'm looking actually first at the Gradle file to see what libraries is this project using, because it gives me some idea of also is this an up-to-date thing, right? Or what is using anything interesting? It gives me some first idea. And the second will be the manifest, because it shows me kind of like how many entrance points does this app have, right? Like background services, like multiple activities, things like this. So let's maybe have a quick look at the Gradle file first. So that's the first thing I would touch.
Okay, that's a good point. So now when you talk about the Gradle file, and this is where now there's usually all this other conversation around which one of the two Gradle files you look at.
Yeah, so normally the main one should be really short, right? It should just set up like all your repositories, but there's no library imports there, right? So I would go to the app Gradle file, right? The one in the app folder. Yeah, this is the one.
Yeah, exactly.
Here we can see what libraries actually this app is using, and there's a lot of Android thing, like you can see here it's using Android X, which is lifecycle, new models. Gives you some idea of like the tech that is used. That's why I liked looking at this first. Then there are a lot of other Google Play Service libraries. We already found out that they're using Play Services. One thing, for example, is using Google Guava. Like there's always discussion, could you use Guava or not, right? Google is fan of Google Guava, which makes sense. Protobuf, for example, is interesting for me. So they're not I guess they're not using like JSON, but they're using Protobuf, or maybe they use it for something locally. We have to figure out, but that's for me interesting. They're using the barcode scanner, the Z thing, the crossing. It's also because we saw something makes sense because something about scanning. So that's the library that they're using, which is also Google, which makes even more sense. What's interesting, see, they use Volley. I haven't seen this in a while. Volley is an HTTP library. So most people nowadays use Retrofit or behind it, OK HTTP. Only older apps, Volley was like an intermediate thing, but it's also from Google. So that's probably why Google's using it. So no third party. But some developers would look, hey, why are they using Volley? Like, I haven't seen one. Because most developers are used to Retrofit nowadays, right? There might be a reason here, or maybe they didn't want a third party. But it's something that I would just write it down. If I would do a code review, I would say, oh, Volley, interesting. Because Volley is kind of like deprecated without telling about it. No one's unmaintained like nowadays. So
I saw something interesting. They when I was like, I think we were having this conversation, I think initially with you, like why would they use Volley and stuff. So it was interesting when I checked out their repository on GitHub, and let me just pull that one up. It's so when you do a quick Google search on it, it's like you see a Google search, it brings you and tells you, hey, so this fast part tells you on May 6th, 2020, this is the thing that they're talking about here. But then something interesting is they actually have a whole page that they are using and they're maintaining, which is that, and then the GitHub is there. So let's look at the page, and so the page talk about it, and they have. I think there's a time I saw when they have something that they don't want to use, they put it like here. This is no longer something we're using. It's
so it's a good point. There's full documentation here, nothing about deprecation, because I think the only hint about deprecation was I think it was probably the last Android Developer Summit, or the one before. At some point, there was a Firebase. You probably find this on YouTube. There was a Firebase, the Fireside Chat, which is where all the Google developers are normally on stage, and then the audience can ask questions. And then someone said, this whole conference, you did not talk about, maybe it was Google I/O, did not talk about Volley. And then I think the answer was, from someone from the Android team was, we gave you the list of libraries that we think that you should use. That's all we say about it.
Mhm.
So they didn't say don't use it, but they did not say, we didn't mention Wally anywhere. This is all we can say.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
I said it's kind of like deprecated, but not deprecated, because I think there's still a big audience for Wally users. Like
exactly. Because then I'm seeing here, like the last commits, like you have like
2 days
five,
ago.
3, 4 years, and then there's like months, 2 days ago. Yeah, and like, oh, okay, wait, okay, this is interesting.
Nice.
And I'm seeing, even if I look at their issues, maybe is I have 27 days, February 26th.
This is actually a good way of like checking a library, right? You should check what the issues, when is the last time maintained. This is something to definitely keep in mind if you evaluate your library.
Exactly. Because like right now,
and we had this discussion in the community, right? Like just because someone told you don't use Wally, it's like deprecated and old. And then what Frank did, he just went online and checked.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But so there's something else that I also use. Yeah, so I check out. So the reason why I also like going to issues is I like to also semi-prepare myself for the kind of errors, or like these are the kind of errors I might encounter, things that have not been dealt with. So for instance, I know definitely if I touch on something like this, I will definitely have an error on that, and it's not been dealt with because this is like 27th of July 2017. Doesn't ensure that timeout elapsed before trying. This is 2017, and so I'd really start to say, whoa, do I have a way of going around this? Am I using a tool because people are using it, or am I using a tool because I'm sure I could probably have a way around this? And then if I have a way around it, I could easily just like maybe fix it. Like there's no sample here. This is something that people are complaining. Like this is like 2017. And I think that's, wow, it should have a sample, man. It should
like,
have a sample.
11 issues sounds good, and like they didn't sound like super critical, right? It's not like stop working in latest Android or something. So
exactly. So that's the thing. So
and they even can you go there? Let's like from one of the pull requests that are open there. I'm curious now.
Pull request.
So someone tried to change something.
So yeah, so you see, this is.
So these are a bit older, so maybe they didn't want to merge those, but they didn't want to close those either. So that's interesting.
Okay. And then there's 111 that are closed.
But it's not like right. It's like 4, and then there might be a reason that those 4 are still open.
Yeah, and then I think this is like it's failing.
I think you're
exactly. Right. Yeah. So that then there's something else. I think the guys are starting out in Android probably when they see this yellow thing. It's just simply Android Studio telling you that, hey, there's a newer version of this that you can update, change to 1.25, and it does this automatically. I think I'm trying to remember the shortcut that I use where it automatically searches it out and it's like updates everything for me automatically. And so you can do that for all of this one. But just remember the only danger with doing that, especially with the sample app, is you might do an update, and then there is, with the update of the library, there is a deprecation on the way they implemented something. And that's why maybe it's probably best for us to stay on where we were. Yes, yeah, let's stay where we were, because just in case you wake up and you have an error, now you'll be fighting with the error of the language. So the first part is, once it's working, you can edit 1 or 2 things, and now you can go back and just make a change.
I think the thing is, like, you always, as a developer, always try to use the latest, but be mindful about it. Like don't do a one-line change of an update to user and update all your libraries, because the actually change that you're introducing is really, really much bigger, although you're not aware of it, because you don't know what happened between 0.4 and 0.5. There might be a complete change, not only, maybe it's just like a fix, but maybe you're actually bringing in bugs, right? So if it's like super critical update, just do the update. And then, for example, at SoundCloud, we look at this once a week. We look at like which libraries can we update. So we're really trying to be up to date, but then we have like a process of checking those.
Okay, cool. So you said you look at the build of your file, and then you're interested in knowing what are the libraries that are being used.
This can be an idea. Now next, what I will look at the manifest.
The manifest, okay, cool. So then we go to the manifest. Let me close that. And
can you go?
So this is the first.
One more thing.
Sorry.
Can you go
on the?
Okay. and scroll down. The test, we didn't look at the test one. So, okay, for me, this also gives you some hints, right? Are there like tests? I mean, you can actually find the test, but they're actually having like a test runner here. There's some Google Guava things that are explicitly bought for test. I can see they're using JUnit 4, right? Like, yeah, looks like. They're using Truth, which is an assertion library. So just give some rough idea. What's the level of testing? Like I'm a big testing guy, so I normally also look this, but this is not as important as the rest. Yeah, the next I would do the manifest.
Okay, so then you go to the manifest, and so you say, is there a reason as to why you don't look at this build locator file?
Can you repeat?
Is there a reason why you don't look at this specific build.get file, the one for the whole project one, and not for the one, leave the one for the app? We talked about that.
Yeah, I mean, actually, yeah, I don't look at this very often because, yeah, normally there are hints here, right? Don't add many things here. I mean, you can introduce a lot of mess by messing around with this file, but in a good project, like all the things are in your application directory, and this is more like infrastructure related changes.
Okay, cool. So then we go to the manifest file, and so why do you look at the manifest file?
So the manifest.
Why do you?
Some idea which features are kind of used from which permission does this need? Like what activities does it have? Does it have background services, right? There's like some broadcast receivers. It's like sometimes you get some interesting things, and then I'll keep this amount, or maybe, okay, let's start from this activity that I'm seeing here or something like this, right? So we have the packet structure, and then we have the manifest, and together they give, I think, a really good overview over like what is actually inside, especially a larger project. That you don't get lost while digging through the packages, and then see there's actually a lot of activities here, and there's some receivers.
Yes, exactly. So
like I thought this is a single activity app with a lot of fragments. So okay, interesting.
So then the permissions are here. The sayings are that, and then there's the permission.
Bluetooth makes sense. There's some camera, which is probably for the scanner, like for the barcode scanner, right? So Bluetooth camera.
And then
decent.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I'm seeing all this. I guess the Bluetooth one is for the sharing the what do you call it? The information, whether someone
like the whole idea is about Bluetooth, the exposure notification between the devices here.
Exactly. And then there's the camera, and then now there's the application here, and then you have backups.
Okay, no, backup is interesting. I think the default everything's true. It supports right to left, at least from the manifest. It might be something, if you have a lot of time, maybe switch the app to Hebrew or Arab and see if it's actually working, because the manifest says it should work.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, then it would look like that. So if you see, like the main activity is the one that we already saw, like a home exposure notification activity, right? But there are a few others, which is interesting. So that gives you some idea.
Home exposure that's about.
It seems like all of them have their own. Like there's Notify has one, exposure has one. There's a debug one, which kind of makes sense. It's also something like hidden things that are not obviously like a debug activity you might find through a manifest.
Exactly, yeah. So there's that.
Okay, but there's the kiosk. And I think all the things kind of for me make sense to find in this app, although interested that there are so many activities, because nowadays Google promotes like single activity because it works super nice with the navigation, with Jetpack navigation. But a lot of developers still are used to having activities, or sometimes often there is a reason to have separate activities.
Okay.
So we see receiver, which is probably for push notifications, which makes sense. Or for Bluetooth notifications, either or, yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And then there is the whole of that.
Again, some data about fonts, which is interesting that the reference application does like custom font handling. Might be even like a bit distracting. It's good to make it nice, but I don't think that anyone cares about a font about like a reference application.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So then, so we have all of this. So then once you say, so you check out the manifest, and then you check out the build.get. Is there something else that you check? Like, for instance, are you and I've seen this. Do you probably go the route and say, oh, I need to probably open these files here, the ones that are written test, and you get someone coming in to see all of these things? Do you ever open these files, or what do you do?
So as I'm big into testing, actually testing is one of the things I definitely check, maybe even before running the app. And which is, for example, very interesting because unless we can check if it's actually here, it doesn't look like here. Because a lot of developers, they start with like the wizard Android application. And there's always two tests there. There's an example unit test, an example Android test. And in my experience, like 80% of the project forget to even delete those. So you open like someone sends you an app, and there's still the example unit test that checks like that one and one is two. Like come on, this is like part of the hygiene of your project, right? Like keep it clean and delete unused things. And this gives me some idea of like how clean is this project sometimes. And if there are no tests, then there's also something like, hey, wait, tests are not important for you or what?
Okay.
So, for example, here we see like, okay, he's doing fragment scenario, which is still a recent API, which is really nice to get like a fragment in a specific state that you need. So I see a lot of tests, which is cool.
Exactly. And so that's the one for the tests. And so with this, I don't know if you have anything else to comment on with regards to that whole structure. Probably something of interest would be to look at, I don't know, maybe the network or something, or
yeah,
exposure.
Check actually how they do nearby and how to do the network, because we have an idea of what how the UI is built, right? Looks like some things. I also saw Room as a database model, so maybe we can probably find some Room model somewhere. But yeah, I mean, let's see how they do the network, because that's very interesting.
Yeah, so there's the nearby and then the network. So we can, I'm seeing like on the network, they have all of this. So let me close
nearby network. That's interesting.
Yeah, so this is like they have everything to do with. So they have, I'm seeing country code.
What is country code? So let's look into this.
So on country codes.
So what we see here, like there's a lot of Java doc, and there's a lot of discussion. Should you document methods and classes and a lot of teams? And this is a reference app, right? If you build an API, you need to have a lot of those. That totally makes sense, and don't do it without. In your normal project, I like sometimes like I would explain what country code is, because the name doesn't tell me everything I need. But for example, I would not like write documentation for a method, because that's changing too often. But for like a public API like this and a reference app, that is totally valid and totally useful and actually really, really good. But this is just how I see it. Like, and if I don't find any Java doc, this doesn't mean that's a bad project. It might be that the methods and the class names are so good that you don't need those. So they're not a sign of like good or bad, but it depends on the type of project I think you're on. But for us, it will be helpful because we can actually read what is country codes about, right? So the encapsulated logic and persistence of ISO alpha to country codes. That's actually really good at mentioning what is the ISO standard for the country codes, because there's so many.
Uploads and downloads. Okay.
I don't know still what they do with it, but yeah, I guess there's a reason that they need that.
So then they put the default country, telephony manager, obviously. And then down here, it's down the list of country codes relevant to the end days of the user's possible exposure.
Maybe it's more when you change with your phone, when you go to a different country or so, maybe that's also interesting.
Yeah, so then when you move, it just changes automatically.
But although it might be a German app that you're building, people will go to Poland, like to neighboring countries. So it's actually a good thing to also be aware of those, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. Then there's the whole, let's see, so that's the one for the country codes. And then the device tester.
What surprises me, normally when I open like a network package, I would expect some kind of API class there, right? I mean, there's a key uploader, but I don't see like, where's this one file where I see like the protocol, right? Like there's a lot of files here about keys and codes, and there's a downloader and uploader. Maybe that's what we're looking for.
Is it maybe that they probably put it,
what's the last one? What's the UI ones? Like maybe the URI's one is the one that's doing the request. Otherwise, I would search for actually how to use
this. This is the one that's doing the request, the utils one. Because this is what I'm seeing. It's doing a request code, start exposure.
But it's just the two request codes. Which, for example, this is not a util, right? I mean, we have these classes where we put like constants, But a constant is not a util, right? I'm surprised that they're not in common code, because if you share these, you should put them somewhere, but this is not a util. Util is something like, I don't know, a string util, right? Things like this for me.
Okay, so then, so that's what they have. So on the request codes, that's what they put on the util. And then what else you have is expression code. So then,
but I think it's like in the network, the last class. I think the UIs class is probably the one with the name UIs.
On the utils or
network? No, network. The last one.
Network. Okay, yeah, that one. So let me just push this.
This might be because normally it's called API or client, but maybe UIs is the one that actually handling those.
Yeah. So then
resolving. Okay, it's resolving. Okay. There seems to be a lot of things. Look, there's like pattern matching here. So I hope this class has a good unit test.
And that base download, it takes it from that.
So there's an interesting thing. So when you look at this method that's called upload UIs, it returns a listenable future. And I remember like people talking about this when this was published. Like, so listenable future, the future is like a construct from Java. And in Android, it's not that common to use futures because we have like Java or one of these kind of things like to do these kind of programming, right? But I think they decided here that they don't know if you're familiar with Java to use built-in things, and they decided to go for futures, which is, I never heard about a listenable future, to be honest. I work with some futures, but only rarely. I think it's, if they only use it, if you only have like one method or so, you can discuss, do I need to add something like Java for this? So I think it's totally valid. But you always have to keep in mind, do the developers who look at this code have any idea what a listenable future is? Or would be an observable or a live data? I think Android developers would more understand if it would be a live data of UIs, they would completely know what this is. But listenable future, it might be, I have to understand how this works, right? So this is, I can understand why people are very confused here.
So with this one, I've seen like, so I was telling you, I've been writing like all this like Flutter code. So it's something I've seen. It's really common when you're using, now let's refer to URIs, mostly is I've seen a lot of use of the word of futures all the time. And I guess I would probably guess is they're trying as much as possible to bring many people into this. Because I've seen with Dart, it's there. With Dart itself, it is there. And me playing around with Dart, I've seen it mostly.
Dart has a similar concept.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like a similar concept, like exactly what you're saying. So let's check it out. So it checks if the app has been built to the default URI path. And then if it has the default one, it's attempting to use servers. Oh, that's a message that's put out there. Then features immediate feature. Okay. And then it builds this list. And so the list is gotten from okay, this is interesting. Then gets batches of URIs from which to download the files from a given country code.
So there's a lot of things going on here, right? I mean, there are not so many lines, but it's like very complicated also because of the way of the async code, like the callback code, the futures here. This is not easy to understand. So it's very important to have like tests here, to have documentation here, because that's a key thing you need to understand if you have to build this app, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then we do this. So then they do URIs they put that, and then it comes as a whole. This is being logged in. Yeah, so then features from.
It's good that they're normally like not a big fan of having a lot of log statement, but for these kind of apps to understand it, you could just maybe run it and look at the log statement, and then you can figure out what's actually going on here. I think this is a really good thing to have so many log statements.
Exactly. So there's like what you are initially doing, but then now we'd have to come and open this now. Right? This is what you mean?
Say it again.
Like this is what you meant? You said like we have to look at this log statements over here, or is there any other log statement that someone would need to look at? If they need to check
there's like a lot of log statement, like there's a lot of debug logs all over the place. And I think for something like this that's hard to understand, I think it's a good practice to have a log statement there. so the developer can get an idea what's going on. Maybe if he doesn't understand the code, maybe he can. It's easy to understand it with the log statement while he's actually using the app, right? But yeah, I mean, yeah, these are super long methods, right? Like this is like, wow, there's for loops and another if loop, and so in the code review, I will probably ask the developer to split this up because I'm already lost what's going on here. So would be nice.
That's the thing.
Logs
Yeah, like you see, yeah, you see the way you have from 126 to 163. If this is just like one very long thing, already it starts to get a little bit, I would say, like the way you're saying, like a little bit confusing. But I guess maybe the lines are longer because the comments are being added.
Yeah.
No, that's
for example, there's always a comment or there's a log statement before a block. And this basically gives you some idea what's going on here. And normally, this is a sign that you can actually extract this block in a method. And then a method that has a nice name that, I don't know, this is, what does it do here? Like parsing each line, right? So you have a for loop and then you have a parse line method. You don't have to understand how you parse a line, but this is like, there's a lot of things going on here. Like, but this is one file is like a key file. I think that's fine here. And maybe also for a reference app, maybe it's easier. As you use a lot, sometimes it's easier if you want to explain a concept to have it on one method that does it all. Yeah. They can understand it, then they can make it in their own way and make it clean. I think I would say, like, yeah. And if you remove the log statement and the comments here, right, then this reduces a bit.
Okay. And then now we go down, and then we have, and then it ends there. So then it gets the default URI pattern, matches to this. Then this is the one for uploading. And so this, I would imagine what this is dealing with is is both the downloading and uploading. Wait. Yes, downloading and uploading the diagnosis case. And so it would tell you whether maybe this is what tells someone. You remember that UI skin I think that we had, which was mostly, I would guess this is not there.
So I think this is downloading, like, yeah, these exactly there. I think the exposures are the ones you're downloading. Then this is part of this.
Yeah, it tells you over here, right, that this is what you've been exposed to. This is what you've not been exposed to.
This is what I would expect to. Yeah. Maybe let's look at that thing like last, like. So how do we store? How do we store it? Because this app needs to work offline, so probably that's why we have storage, right?
And so that's where now they have the storage one, right? And so I think that's what. So there is this.
You can tell by the name, these are all in our database entries, and it's like an interesting thing. Like when you have a new app, are you always having a database? What is your approach like? Or when do you add the database? When do you decide I want to add room or something like this with it? What's your approach?
So most of the time. So when I know I'll have so like look at the region I'm in. I'm in Africa, and so one of the biggest challenges that you have here is you have to also be really careful when you're thinking about network, because you're not gonna have the way we have network coverage here is very interesting. So if you're moving from, let's say, Nairobi, and you're moving towards the countryside with your phone, or even just slightly outside Nairobi, it's very interesting how you can move from 4G to 3G to 2G and to edge connectivity within a span of like 2 hours, and then you go back to 4G again. And so it's like something that you need to think of, because by the time someone is trying to access or download something that even 50 KBs and they are playing around with edge, it's a struggle. Trust me, it's a struggle. And you know, the worst part is not all of us are techy. That's the first thing that we need to understand, that the users of these applications are not going to be technical people. And so according to them, is if they start downloading something and it's not working, according to them, they'll go back to Facebook, and Facebook is working. So they go back this other side, they're like, okay, wait, this app, it's not connecting to the internet. So it has a problem. Next thing you know, they've installed your app. And so I think for me, the best thing is always, I prefer to store as much, not like everything, but then store that thing that I think is not essential, and then now I can easily serve that to people. So for instance, like with this application, where you have things like exposures, for instance, if someone is passing by, I would imagine that they're walking around or like they're driving by, This is a moving from town one to town two, and then there's a cafe somewhere in between. And the cafe doesn't have very strong connectivity. And so I would, when they have very strong internet, download all of this. And it's like, these are just like keys and store them. And then once I store them, I know, okay, cool, when they're here, I can easily just like load all of those things. I don't need very heavy internet connectivity. And so the only thing I'm doing now is I would collect from people and then say when the internet is probably strong, then that's when now I can actually start. So
I mean, this totally makes sense for this app to do it like this. But you brought a good point. Like, think about like, yeah, your area, right? Like for me, like the offline capability is not the first thing I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
It's definitely something you should think about, like when designing app, because offline first changes a bit the design that you're having, right, in mind. But like with a strong internet connection and like a lot of cases, like I worked in a lot of shopping. No one is interested in the shopping, like the list that someone posted out on like eBay or something like this, like from 3 weeks ago. It's a nice offline thing, but when you go online, it will change anyway, right? So this is not really useful, but for a lot of apps like Messages or something, you don't, as you said, you don't want to download this all the time. And this is like an app that like everybody is supposed to use. It should be in their pocket. Like they should be not if they open it. Oh wait, I'm downloading all your data and see if there's someone like that was affected.
Exactly, yeah.
So like keep about like the app that you're building and the region that you're aiming for. That's like a really good, I think, point too.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think they have that. I think maybe something that we can very interesting here is so let me ask this. And I know we probably will have beginners here, and they'll be wondering, what does DAO stand for? Why? Like I've seen DAO. So what is this DAO? Is it like some certain? What's this? Like, you know, some people might be wondering. Like I'm seeing DAO. What are these guys talking about? Why are they just like brushing over this thing and they're not talking about it? They're just like mentioning it and they're just like going on. So I mean, like, what is it? What would you probably? Why use the word DAO for that matter in the first place? And
yeah, so maybe if you're not having like a background in like SQL and like databases, you might have never heard what DAO. Like you see like this thing. What is a DAO? Like I think it stands for like data access object, right? So these are like the things that you store in your database, or the things that you use to access your data, right? So when we look at what here, we have an exposure DAO, and it has a few methods.
And then there's and then there's also another positive diagnosis DAO, and then there's another one called token DAO, and so there's the exposure DAO over here. And
so one thing I see in all of them is like I come back to your question in a second, but look, some of them return a live data, and some a listenable future. Remember when I said live data would be much easier to understand for a user, and now the DAO actually have both. And it's probably a reason why one of them was not enough or didn't fit the model. But for example, as a developer looking at this, like, oh my God, there's like two different other ways of like returning these things. And maybe someone has Java and coroutines like in the next like flow and in the next method, and like try to avoid this. Like have like one way of delivering your data out of whatever your network, your DAO, whatever, right? Like a database layer. So this is something that I see here, which is very interesting.
But like I'm seeing something also here. Like if you look at line 35, let's compare this line here and this line number 38. And so here what they're doing is they are querying from exposure entity, and I guess they are syncing.
Yeah.
And then this one they're getting all the live data. This one is
when you look at the select statements, so they're getting data, right? One returns a live data, probably updatable, and one is just a future, which is probably I would assume this is like in the ArcJava we have single and we have observable. Probably the live data one is the ones that triggers all the time, while the other one is like a one-time thing. That's why they have this future construct.
Exactly.
That's what I'm guessing here. But ArcJava would be simple, right? So just that the user know, hey, is this multiple times, or if I just get one result? But still, it's like it looks a bit weird to me. Like, but yeah, these DAOs are the one how you access the data that's coming back.
Exactly, and then you have the positive diagnosis.
Returning your entities. These are the two words that you see here. You have databases, which actually showing. You see there's some exposure notification database. Then there are the DAOs, which is just a nice way of like encapsulating all your select statements and all these update statements on this. And then they're returning entities, which are actually the things that are stored in database. So there's a list of positive Diogenes entity. So write positively. And entities is normally how you call these things that you store in a database.
Okay. And so what you're saying is for the guys who don't have this understanding is what this means here is that it's selecting from this database. And then it's going for, and it's picking out this list over here, right?
And the nice thing with Vim is that it gives you an actually object. So maybe we can open this positive entity.
This one now, if I can get that. There it is.
See, there's an entity, and this is like basically an entrance that you like things that you store in these databases, right? As you can see, but something about keys and columns. And one thing that is like well done here, and this is something to really, really keep in mind, because especially with simple apps, sometimes developers mix them up. You have this one thing that comes from the network, some JSON object, and then you maybe have like JSON or Moshi annotations, and then you have these things in database, and you have another annotations, and you could use this right in your app, right? And then you have like one class and mix them all over. Please don't do this. So these are different layers in your app, right? You have the database storage layer, and this has entities. And then you might converting this into a model object that you're working with. And this might have the same values. And they might have the same values also having from the network, but they're still different things. And in the future, they might change. Maybe the database or the API returns you two new things that you don't store to the database. Or there are multiple versions of the database and things like this. So, or you're changing the data for making them easier accessible in your domain, right? So have these mapping layers and keep the database objects in the database. And don't let database like implementation details leak into your UI. UI should never show like a live data of entities. It should be of some model object, right? I think this is something that I think is really, really important. So get it right from the beginning, like.
Okay, cool.
Maybe where these use entities are used, if they are mapped to something or if they were directly used on the API, would be actually interesting.
Yeah. So then the next one would be, let's see what we're looking at now. So we looked at the whole storage bit, and then there's the whole shared preferences. Let's see, storing the exposure notifications. Okay, this is fine. I don't know if you'd have a comment on this exposure notification shared preferences.
I mean, I have to read probably what it's doing. I found it interesting. So we have like database thing and we have shared preferences. So it's two ways of storing things. It's nice both in the storage. But it's something that I would ask the developer, oh, wait. So there are some things where you need a database, and there are some things where you just put like in a shared preference, right? I think a lot of apps have it like this, and there might be the debug information on shared preference, so they don't need a database. But like it's two outputs, right? Something that I would write down and like maybe ask later or dig deeper into.
When someone is doing that, yeah. When someone does something like this, when they present it to you,
it doesn't have to be bad at all. Right? I think might be totally normal, but
like just to have a conversation, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and the only thing that is important is like have it like encapsulated somewhere, right? Like so that whoever reads these values should not know if this actually it's coming from a DAO or it's coming from like shared preferences. So that is actually at some point you can easily swap each other and then share them, store them completely different, maybe in a file or so. It might be next thing shared preference is not enough. Use a file. And then it should not influence your UI at all, right? Something that actually this app is not using, which is normally best practice, is something like dependency injection. I have not seen anything about Dagger or Coin or any of these here. So I think some of the typical layers that we would have and like the way we put them together is missing here, which because it's a reference application, so they don't want to have these confuse us with all these things. So I think it's valid here. But in a normal app, like if someone would do this like this, and then, so it seems like these entities are actually used directly in the view models, which is exactly what I said don't do. But again, maybe if we look at a real app next time, I would be more critical, but here it might still be okay, right? But normally I would, it should be something like, I don't know, debug settings, and you ask debug settings, which probably just an interface. Okay, give me this key, give me this value, and you don't know from a database, from a file, from a network, right? It just tells you the data.
Yeah. And then we would have that. And so this is like one of the examples that I think I was like saying. So like you see this yellow, when you see this like this highlighted thing, this is I've seen Android Studio now is trying to like bring this to attention in that yes, the code works, but it's not like giving you this tip. And yeah, and so if you click on it, it tells you replace commit with apply. And so if you this is the other thing, like I can do this and it will be okay, it will clean itself.
Yeah.
But I guess because it's like a sample app, I'm usually very cautious in doing this because I might do this and then it starts breaking 1,000,001 things on the other side.
Yeah, there's like a big difference. One is async, one is not async. But for example, and I have seen this, like people would write like apply for a job, and then they have to do a coding challenge, and then they send in code, and this code is full of these yellow lines and underscore red lines, and I was thinking like, come on, you just wrote this, and the IDE is telling you, hey, there's a better way to doing this, and you ignore this. What does it tell you about like you as a developer? So this is giving you a good impression, right? So it's actually a really good point that you show. Come on, it's telling you exactly what you need to do, and just do it, right?
And exactly, but then that's the thing. And so for me, I'd be really quick in like saying, okay, cool. There's a reason why they're doing that, and then I wouldn't actually go for suppressing.
Yes.
And the reason why I wouldn't go for suppressing is something like I think I learned in the new role where I'm working at, where just because you're suppressing something, I feel like that's a shortcut that you're trying to go through so that you don't go through the pains of understanding why is it telling me to replace commit with apply? Why is that happening? And then the problem that happens with suppressing these things, because let me give you an example. So like if you click suppress here, what happens is this line is added on top of it. And so yes, you have apply here and then you have suppress here, but then at some point this will come and start to bite you down the road, because then now because you suppressed it, this is a very large code base. When things start failing, you don't know why something is failing. I think I saw this. There's a time I think I built a project. It's like Flutter moving to this other side. And so when I looked at the Android one, there was a clash with the Gradle file, and it turns out it was just because I had made some certain small error in suppressing some certain updates to my Gradle files. And so that small thing of suppressing that bit of ignore Gradle updates started bringing me errors where I had to go in, spent I think a couple of days just figuring out where is this error coming from, because it's not easily there. And so for me, on this part, I would actually suggest.
Yeah, I mean, I have one rule for this. Like, if I suppress, I need to add a comment. And if someone wants to suppress something, there need to be a comment why
you suppressing.
Is actually suppressing. There might be a reason behind it, but then please tell me, right? And then if I see this code, do we have an example? Like, for example, like Java, like there's a warning if you subscribe to something, but you don't look at the result. But maybe there's a reason why you don't want to put this in a disposable and then make sure it's clean. Maybe there's this needs to be fire and forgot for a certain reason, because you can close the screen and I don't care about the result, but it's important that this information kicks off. So if there's something can ignore a result, it's fire forget because of these reasons, this is fine, but put it there in the code, please. Because otherwise I might change it and then break it by fixing the warning, right? That's also a thing.
Exactly.
There was a warning. I'm fixing it with the IDE, and then I broke a feature.
Exactly. Yeah. So but then generally, I think
I don't know why this was there in first.
Exactly. And so the one who's picked up the code is wondering, why is it not working? Why is it not working? Why is it not working? And I think that's the thing that happens. And sometimes you can go ahead and update, like the way we were looking at the Gradle files, and like we can come and update something here, and then because of this update, the way I think Danny you said that there's something there's a very huge change between 1.24 and 1.25, and because of that, maybe it comes and affects the way we write code here. So I think those small things can start to play around all the time, and so sometimes I just prefer to leave it the way it is. And this is just me showing the example of the way we have our project here. I don't know if there's any other thing that we probably need to touch on for now.
I think we're already looking at this app for like quite a while now. We can maybe briefly look at like just one layout. So like one thing, I would open a random layout and, for example, check, are they using constraint layout? Are they using like the old school of like building layouts? So this is just like something I would
So
look
I'm
into.
seeing they have a
Nothing
so they have
wrong with
like
any
they have so I guess about will have a lot of text. So let me put about there and also just have the exposure home, how they'll be handling those views of the different exposures. So that would
Another question,
be
like, yeah,
something
no,
like
waiting for build, but there are like 3 views up there, right? Code, split, on design. Which one are you actually using when you look at XML files? Because this is also like a developer, everybody developer has their own.
when
Actually, I learned lately, you can actually set the default.
okay, good. So yeah, you can actually set the default one. So I'm really biased here. So I am more of I started from the UI bit and moved to Android. So I normally like to see, okay, how does it look like first? That I guess that curiosity again. It's like how they actually doing it. And then I think I like moving this way where I come and have it and leave it at split. And then once I leave it at split, I mean, I have a big screen, probably someone won't see the way it is like this. If I really need to make some change, and I like the way the new Android Studio makes it so easy to do this, where you can easily look at things playing around like that. This whole bit is good.
That's also my favorite view. I like
exactly.
Design view, only design view is not enough, but like a split view is exactly what I want to have.
Exactly. And so there's also the other thing of this thing here where you can just see direct design or you can look at the blueprint. But I don't know why I'm just a fan of the design. Like I just want to see the it is like this.
What I like is the button next to it. Can you click that one?
This one?
Yeah, this one. Yeah. So this one you can switch easily between portrait, landscape, from dark mode, light mode. So this is super easy when you build a new UI to check how is this looking in dark mode. Is everything messed up? So I really love like the second icon there.
This one here, and then also just to see like this whole CardDoc UI mode. How does that?
Night mode, maybe to see if they actually handle this correctly.
Like
you can still read it in dark mode, so like.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing I think is maybe we can touch on, let me just add Note Light again. And so there's that's exposure notification. This theme looks like that. Okay. And then there's a compact light.
You can also check the languages here, which is also interesting. And then you can switch, like check if it's fit. Like there's some languages are longer than others. I'm not sure how it's in Kenya, but like German and Finnish, for example, have very long words. Or you can even go to right to left languages like Arab to see where it actually aligns.
Yeah, so I'm actually seeing that they've actually implemented this. Then I imagine if they have edit translation, so they don't have. Oh, this is interesting. And just show all locale, just show all the keys. I guess most of the time I've seen what someone would end up doing is just like have all of these things being translated for you. And then load them here. I saw some interesting way in which someone was trying to implement these strings, rather. And so for him, he loads all of them, uses as a JSON file. And so what he does is he just translates the JSON files themselves very fast, and then they are quickly uploaded. And so for him, he's locked. So he locks the distribution of the app. So if he doesn't have, and that's the other thing, like you find developers never pay attention to. You're like, you have your app that works, you know very well you've not translated it to Chinese, for instance, and then you've distributed it to China. And so you have it in English. And so guys are wondering, what's exposure notifications? What's that in the local dialect? Yeah, that's the thing. And I like also the fact that you can actually, this is automatically pick the best, but you can also check to see how it looks like with the various levels there. So that's the bit for the UI. The code, I think that's what you wanted to look at also, is how they actually implement this.
What's interesting, the first thing I see here, they're not using constraint layout, right? So like this about dialog, super simple. Like with constraint layout, you can build the same thing very simple, like, but they still go with the old school Android way of using linear layout. just like something would.
Again, it's something maybe they're trying to bring everyone on board. Like, hey, guys.
Everybody try to use constraint layout nowadays because you also have the nice editor and everything, right? And this goes more like the old school way with a linear layout. There's another linear layout. There's a scroll view. There's a linear layout. So we used to build Android apps like this, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So then you have all of this put here. You will be notified if you have been exposed, and yeah, there's this bit where they use string, sort of like hard coding it here. And I guess this is just because to handle that whole bit of translation, translating from one language to another, it's easier when you have it in a string format than have it 100% like typed out here. Texting, put all of this text and copying it and just putting it here.
It's actually well done.
So that's like one.
All the things are coming from XML file. Like a lot of the paddings, they're coming from a dimension file. So this actually, I would say, this layout file is actually pretty well done because they extracted things and they didn't hard code anything here, right? So they can reuse things. It's much easier. So
exactly.
Just like as we said, like the UI is nicely done. So someone put some effort here, although it's just a reference app, right? To use some best practices.
Okay. And I think the reason why I also picked this part here and also the about page was to just show something which is right. Yeah, here. Like this is just pure text. There's nothing extra here. And so if you look at what's that background? Yeah. So here's how they're doing that background where they have a whole text view running at the back of this that has that whole reference only thing playing around. And so I guess I'm just thinking out loud that if you're building an app and you want to use it like a sample and you want to give it to this client and you're afraid they'll run away and they'll go and start using it, probably this is one thing you can do and have it on your app. Yeah, I was like, yay, people say like reference only. And so that's like maybe a cool thing in which someone can learn today. That just
and it's like super easy, right? It's just context view. It has a rotation of 45 degrees. So there's no big magic in building a watermark. It's like, come on, everybody can copy these 3 lines, which is actually a very clever and simple way of doing this.
Can copy. Yeah, just this and just like putting it and just saying the gravity center, the text is that, and that, and once they put it there.
And this works in nearly every layout. It takes like it's matched parents. It's just the last one in your layout, so it's fine, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's the one. It's like this text bit of it, and you see the way they implement this linear layout, and they have this. Let me see. They have this back button.
Yes. Where's the button coming from? Yes, I think.
Yeah, there's a button. Yes, there's an image button there.
No, that's like an interesting way of doing this. So they're not using Toolbar or something here. They literally put this in the layout. It's just something I found like a bit weird. Like, okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to look.
They always use the system, right? And like the system has like an up button, and if you then set it up all with the new navigation component, this is so easy. Like it handles a lot of things for you. And probably now what they have to do is like check the image button. There's probably a find view by ID, and then they set a click listener, then they finish the activity or something. Like let the system make it work for you with all these amazing Jetpack libraries nowadays. So, but things work, right? And you can always optimize later for something.
Optimize later, yeah, exactly. So that's the one. I feel like this is mostly like an Apple thing. You know, they have like all these buttons inside the screen, and you have to click back and forward and do that.
The designers, you love them because designers always have Apple devices, so they always force us to add these buttons too, right? At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, it's very true.
Then you you build it without it, then you give it to the designer. The designer, like before there was swipe navigation, like had no idea how to leave the screen and ask you, hey, you have a bug here. Like, no, there's like a back button on the bottom of every device, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so when you build your Android UI and you're busy giving them something that doesn't look like this, it's almost like, where's that button? It needs to have that button.
Yeah.
But this is Android. We don't have that button because we have it down here. You know, so
I mean,
like that.
Like this very often, like I have this discussion with designers, like, and you tell them, like, yes, the button is there, but sometimes do different things, because the idea, at least in the earlier days of Android, it was more like an go up to the beginning of the flow or to the next level. It is not actually like an iOS. It does not go to the previous screen. So this is why we have back and up. Nowadays, they're becoming more and more aligned, but still, I like this idea of like, yes, we might have the same button or same position, but it's not the same thing. What you know in iOS up there, we have down in Android.
Down Android. Yeah.
The other thing I always call up, so that to not get confused. But often, yeah, we implement it in the same way, and yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So those are like the two I guess the two UIs that I would say would have been interesting looking at with all of this. And I don't know if let me see, say sync now. No, we don't have sync now. So I'll go back to the project view and I will put this here and say
maybe one final thing we can look at, and then maybe we should like sum this up a bit. Maybe what we haven't seen is this is all about like and connecting with each other. So maybe let's look at the actually exposure package and see how do they handle the thing there, right? Because that might be interesting, like.
Exposure, yeah.
Yes.
So the exposure.
Maybe it's about it.
And so
I think nearby one that we're looking, not exposure. Exposure is the one that shows you the exposures you had. I think that's the one we look in the UI. I think nearby is the one we need.
Exactly. Nearby diagnosis.
Yeah, see there's a broadcast receiver, which is the one that we saw in the manifest, which probably gets all the notifications. So let's open this and see.
Exactly.
The third
one? This one? Okay, cool. And so once you have this, so then you say extend broadcast receiver.
So if you never worked with this in Android, like broadcast receivers is something that it's called from the system for like external events. It could be like a push notification. It should be something that happened in the device, like, I don't know, like a new image was added, like you used to have this, for example, we used to have like, hey, device was rebooted, like things that you want to listen on. This is now a specific Bluetooth one, I'm assuming, that gets like, hey, there's a Bluetooth event coming in for you. And then every time it will create a new one, it will call you this on receive. You need to handle it quickly and then return this to the system flow. And you will see he's using Work Manager, which is pretty nice to do some background work. So this is the way you should do it. Like on receive, kick off the thing that you need to do, and then return the control back to the system, right? You don't want to do all your heavy work here.
Exactly. So then you have that. So that's the exposure notification broadcast receiver. And then there's the configurations, the rest configurations that exist. I guess there are
preferences here.
Yeah, so if you ask me, I think that this will do like submits the key file. I think let's take this. Yeah, submit downloaded diagnosis key files to Google Play Services.
Can you go back to the configuration one? I want to show you something.
The configuration one.
Yes, okay. What do you think about the to-do there? Like developers like to do this. Like to-do, I will continue here later. Like,
I think there is a way in which you can actually, so two things about this to-dos. One is, if I see to-do, that means that there is room for improvement that the person was actually writing code for, but then felt like, well, it works, I can come and touch on this later. That's number one. Number two, I would, and I guess because this is just a sample app and trying to tell people like, hey, you can do this extra things in it. So the other thing I would say, so the first one is, I'm quickly trying to build this thing out and ship it to people, but I'm just like putting this comment out there and saying like, hey, you know what, do this. I'm going to come back to this and touch on it. Now, the other thing that I've seen that you can actually do easily with now my other comment on to do what I think about it is, there is a way in which if I'm doing something that's production ready, that I want to ship this, if it's still in an alpha, beta, that's fine. No, alpha, that's fine. But then if I'm moving towards beta and the like, or like I can put it strictly as one of the rules with a package that actually checks when someone is doing the commit to the code, if there is a to-do, do not accept that file. Okay. And the reason for that is like, why are they telling me that this is something that is a to-do, something that needs to be done? That means it's like, yes, it works, but I also know I can make it better. It's like I feel like I'm not giving you that much of 100%. Yes, Java can come in, or like Android Studio, Kotlin for that matter, in Java, they can actually come and do this for you automatically and set it up for you. But I feel like it's like you've not handled everything. And if let me just try and see if that is actually the case. Not quite, because you see, to make this settable in the debug UI.
Yeah, I mean,
this is what I meant.
That you can add later. So I totally agree with you, and I've seen this. So like having to-dos in the code is bad because they might start with 3 or 4, and then half a year later you have 300 of them, and you probably will never read them anyway. So I like to have some kind of rules and that are automatically checked. So one thing so two things that I've seen. For example, we cannot add in our company add like a to-do without a ticket number. So if someone sees a to-do, we can check the ticket and see like this is about okay, and then maybe also check the priority or something like this. And it's also if you can actually work on a ticket, you can actually easily find all the positions in the code that you need to update because someone already made sure that you're not forgetting this part here. This is one thing. And then one thing that we did when I was at Groupon Merchant app, we used to have like versions. And then, so while we are developing on a feature or something, we would say to do V3 or something. And at some point, we had like an automatic mechanism. Okay, now we are working on release of V3. And this cannot ship if there's any to do with the tag V3. So we cannot ship this as long as there's something there. So we have to look at them and actually say, okay, we can do this in V4. Or delete this. This is not valid anymore, right? Something like this. So like every release, you had to look to do. So it kind of was forcing us. So I like this. There was a mechanism that we continuously had to look into those. I mean, worst case, every time you put it to the next version, but at least you looked at them, right?
Yeah, exactly. Very true. And so that's the one. So you're saying this exposure. Oh yeah. So this is the one that the comment. That's what we're talking about on that whole bit of the commenting. Yeah. And so with this whole one, so it's a state updated worker, diagnosis keys worker. And so I guess these are like workers. This is very interesting. And they mentioned this. Let me close this and then state updated worker. So this file, they say, performs the work to provide diagnosis assessment. Okay, this is very interesting. And so I guess what this file does,
like in the
yes, this is what is doing the heavy lifting. And so here's another thing that happened. So we've just opened this file and there's an error. And it tells us, hey, there's an error down here at the last line, and it is set requires.
What's the error?
Add at requires API M annotations around if version.
That is interesting, right? So this
exactly
reference app might actually crash on all the Android devices, and the AID is telling you.
Exactly. And so if
Maybe
I do,
you can go and open issue was not already opened.
Very nice one. That's a very nice point. But I'm seeing like Surat can tell you like provide feedback on this warning.
But I think this job is not. It's actually not. Look, it's gray, so this method is actually not called. So maybe it's just a debug message, or no, to do schedule the daily job. So this part is not done yet. And this is probably why also the warning was ignored so far. So very interesting. So, but yeah, nice point. You can see immediately like errors here.
Exactly. So then once you see it, it's now for you to decide. So sometimes I think I decide to go on all this like very long, I call it very long paths of trying to figure out how can I fix that. so if I like I do this, and then that works, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, cool, that works. But is it the one? Then now I'll have to find out like what does this mean?
Now it's actually nice because now this is I think what should have happened. Yeah, now there's an annotation there that tells you if you call this method, you need to be on this API level, right? And this is what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you will see it when you actually call this method, and then the warning will come again, and then you can actually handle it. So I think this is the way how the code should have even looked like, even if it's not used yet. But this way you cannot forget.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have, yeah, exactly. So then you have this that does all this lifting of providing the diagnosis keys, the exposure notifications API, and then This one just, I think this just does the work of like updating the, yeah, it broadcasts from the exposure notification API. So this just does all that update.
Yeah. And
so I think
if I would have done this code review now, I think we found like a few places where there was some heavy lifting. That was the UI one that does like the calls. There's the worker, which does a lot of things. And now I would probably check, this seems to be the one that should be tested, right? These should have like a lot of unit tests to make sure. And I would probably look at those tests first and see what are actually cases, what can happen, what can go wrong. These are the things, if you ask like, hey, I don't have like time for writing tests like for everything, these are the things you should test. A lot of times developers, they test this string utils class that makes sure that like, because it's super easy to unit test, but test the ones that are your core functionality. And this is where the heavy lifting happens, right?
But then I'm seeing what they've done here. On the other hand, is there is a test on, there's none on Nearby, which actually does that whole checking.
Yeah.
There's one on storage,
yeah,
but there's none on, let me just open this and slightly expand.
And there could be two reasons. There's like an UI test that kind of does this, which is not in line with the package name. Looks like there's definitely a unit test. Or maybe they couldn't test it because it's not testable. Because it was a really long method with a lot of things happening. And if you don't design these code parts to be testable, it's really hard to write the test afterwards. So these are the things to keep in mind. So this is why like all these layers and like dependency injection, where these come in place, like make sure that you can actually test your code.
Cool. So what are your last?
But if there's some heavy lifting like with the data and how to, there's a protocol specification that Google has and Apple has. These are the things that should be tested, right? Like I don't care if like coming in from Bluetooth, but there should be a method that handle this kind of byte data, right? And there should be units.
Yeah, exactly. And so just as a final, maybe like as an overview, what are your comments on maybe like your last words on this app? Maybe if you say like a key takeaway of some sort with regards to now that we've looked at this app and played around a bit. I mean, like we've even run it here. We've not done some modifications. We've not said like, okay, we're gonna build this. It's like us doing this overview of like the way the whole.
Yeah, let's assume we would write like a document with like, and then the 10 points code review of this app, right? You were paid to review this app, and now you spend like 2 hours looking at this code. So I would write down like, like summary overall looks okay, look okay and good. I would even say probably good. Uses like recent Android principle that uses a Room database, that uses some view models. We haven't looked deeper if they actually use properly.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't use a good architectural layering. I haven't seen like repository pattern. I've seen entities used in the UI, so I would put this as a minus point. I mean, let's forget about that. This is like a reference app, right? There are some things that are tested. Other things seems to be untested, so it goes in the right direction. But I think there should be much more tests here. Some things like Volley is used. It was just mark it down. Volley is used, which not seen very often. Listener with futures might be something that developers might be not familiar with, and it's mixed with live data sometimes. There might be a reason, but follow up here. The UI we said like wasn't always self-explanatory, right? So there should be a bit more UI work.
Yeah.
I would probably follow up like, okay, we found one to-do. Let's check how many to-dos this app had. So I would just write it down, follow up on to-dos to see like, can this be released? Is there something that's actually missing? And for example, we saw this one method, like the daily work wasn't implemented like that. I think this would be my key. Like I would just note like it's not a negative point, but layouts are done without constraint layout. Just something I noticed. I would have done constraint layout and Kotlin, but there is reason probably why they didn't do it this way. But just note, okay, it's Java. It uses linear layouts, one frame layout mostly, not constraint layout, no Kotlin. Yeah, just observation. Not every observation has to have like a meaning, right? These kind of things I would write down. But in general, I think the app looks pretty okay. Some of the methods are a bit too long. there should be some further work to make them more exploratory, self-explanatory.
Okay, cool.
What are
Cool.
your points?
I mean, like for me, apart from the things that you've said, if I can build on it, I had again, you've seen the path that also like following with regards to opening the app and running it. I think that, and probably this is the thing I've seen with most of the sample applications that I've seen that come from Google. There's a certain, I don't think they're usually meant for beginners, and I'm gonna say this why. If you open it as a beginner, there's this extra expectation that you need to know some certain things. So then let's say if I'm opening this app, for instance, this is not an app I would say a beginner, someone who's been playing around with Android for maybe a month, let's say, just playing around with it, they would take some time to sort of like understand what's going on under the hood. Again, that being said, this is not something for let me just use the word that this is not something that I would say that a beginner would open up and easily find comfortable using it, like quickly edit and just like strip it there. Yeah, because I feel like they would start deleting things, then it would fail, then they would give up on like running it. And so I think in some bits like that bit of the UI, and like I've opened the app here on that, especially this debug page that I had a problem with, is like yes, it is for developers, but please, me as a developer, if I was the one who was using this, I would have been struggling because I do not know how to do some certain things. How am I supposed, like, just give me that, make me understand what's going on in this point. Like, explain to me rather fairly. And again, this is maybe because we have not taken time to just go and read through all this documentation. But this is me who's had the announcement that, you know what, exposure notifications API has been done. There's an Android reference design. I quickly jump into it and I'm like, okay, cool, I'm ready to run with that. I'm seated where I am, and I don't think I'm going to be ready for this. Again, the code, you've not looked at it that well. I love the way they were arranging this into different parts, the way they started off, putting this like different bits. But then it got to a point where I think there's some sort of are they going the UI way? Is this like I started understanding that maybe this refers to everything happening in the debug part, and then common is just the common things that happen everywhere. Maybe this is like the common message fabric that are being called all over the app. But then when you come to things like utils, I believe there's probably somewhere where this fits in somewhere within that whole architecting. Granted, this is a way in which some people prefer to do their work. But this is, if I was asked, I would probably have done this differently by removing all these bits from here. Because I think the request codes, what the request codes was doing was just handling the
now that you've seen the app, like there was actually one file with two constants, and this is the whole util package. Like, do you really need a package for 2 lines of code?
Exactly, you know, such kind of things where now I'm wondering, like, could we have put it somewhere else and not have it as another package? And this is where you interact with guys who are, you have the whole microservices argument where people are like, you have the phenomenon who says it's a microservice of a microservice of another microservice, and it's like, okay, why do we need all of this, like this stairs going all the way down? Why not arrange it that way? Because I'm thinking that they probably arranged this as this way. If I was asked to probably do it, I would have removed that whole, you see that whole bit where you have the network, the nearby. I would have renamed them better, even the bits to do with the storage and the onboarding bit. So,
you know, like maybe that one thing that how these things happen, like maybe there were in the beginning, and you could check the Git history, maybe there were more files and utils in the beginning. And then they rearranged them and moved them around, and didn't notice that there are only like 2 lines of code left in this package. And there's this little bit of cleanup that you should do, like, right? You don't want 1,000 of files in the package, but you also, if there's just one, then there's probably something wrong with this package. There's like, as I said, like a package should be like a module, but why would you have a module for 2 lines of code? This would be the microservice or microservice thing that you just mentioned, right? Like,
yeah, exactly, and so that's the debate that is hitting people. But I'm seeing they're even having there are all of these requests that are being made. There are all this what do you call them? issues that have been opened already. So makes it really interesting how this will look like in a couple of days, maybe, where it starts to happen. Unreleased resource files, why is Bluetooth and internet permissions needed?
Yeah, but also interesting. Why is
Maybe.
Bluetooth here? Like, okay, someone hasn't even read as much documentation as we did. It's all about Bluetooth.
Yeah. And then you see what's the version of the minimum SDK in the end. The test dependency should be migrated to Android X. API nearby exposure notification API is not available on this device. You see this is the thing. That yes, the code works as it, but this is like some of the issues that we're complaining about.
But I love like developers like open issues, so they like immediately came out. This is, I think, what Google wanted, and I think we have to give a shout to these developers because they probably didn't had a lot of time because COVID-19 was hitting. Someone said we have to build an API. Someone wrote documentation. Someone, hey, you have like 1 week to do an app like this, right? This is like the pressure you don't want to have.
Exactly. Yeah,
A lot of
exactly.
things,
And I think,
but we also should keep in mind that this is a time
yeah,
critical.
so that's the thing. Like before someone can pick up and say like, oh yeah, they're criticizing about everything. Like, it's like that's the other thing that's very important that someone should mention is that I feel like when COVID started, the Play Store was being hit by all of these apps with like, oh yeah, we're measuring COVID. Oh yeah, we are tracking this. We're tracking that. We're tracking that. And so it got to a point where I'm guessing like Google had to sit down and ask themselves like, hey, wait a minute. If we are the ones on the Play Store and guys are sending us all of these things, we have to also be careful about what kind of information is being shared out there. And I guess that's why when they sat down with, maybe that's why they did this collaborative project with Apple, they had to think about all of these very core things, things like how is this going to work? What's going to happen? Your phone and the others. What kind of information is it sending? How does this thing change over every period of time? And so if there's a match, what happens? And then they had to actually sit down and talk about privacy. And I guess this is where you have these debates where people say, oh yeah, Apple is more private than Google, blah, 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 data and stuff like that. But I mean, like you see, there's been this very concerted effort by Google to actually try and do this. I mean, granted, this is not a sponsored talk on us talking about their things, but it's important for us to mention. And they quickly came up with this thing just to think about, hey, how can we quickly have this framework that guys can use? And not only did they give us the API, they also gave us a sample app. So it's a really big kudos to them, like the way you said. So good stuff, Google.
Maybe it's like to wrap it up, like maybe you could say, hey, I don't need this Google thing, and it's not there yet, right? Right now it's just for agencies. I can build my own thing. And I think this is happening like in the beginning of COVID, like a lot of countries, no, we don't have to wait for Google. We can, Apple, we build our own thing. And then they realized like, oh, wait, like I've seen this, I think Australia, they released an app from what I heard. It needs to run in the foreground. Like you can't give a million people an app and tell them, and always make sure that you always have the app in the foreground. So after you check a message, bring the app back to the foreground. I mean, this will not work. This is not practical at all. This is why Google gave an API, because these are apps that actually check and they're allowed to run in the background and keep tracking. They will not killed by the system. I mean, this is not, then the whole app is useless. And then I see like companies, they had like, they installed 2 apps and they're calling each other so that they're always in the foreground. I mean, don't mess up with the system. There is an API, it's there, right? And check out the reference implementation if you're interested. I totally agree. I think like looking at this, we've looked into this code for 2 hours and we still can't answer the questions that we had on the debug screen. So there need to be a lot of reading here, I think, to understand things. And like, if this would be like a long-term API that you want to encourage people to use, this should be more explanatory, but for the time, and I think for this purpose, I think this is well done. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's important for them to actually go sit down. If you want to use the project, also take time and read all these things. So they're put there for a reason, put there for a reason. Just take time and look at it. Look at this exposure API and just like look at how all of these things play around together. So yeah, so that's the thing. So thanks a lot, Danny. I guess we are going to do this again.
Yeah, no, I think actually an app is used and that implemented this to see like, did I make it better or did they completely mess it up, right? Or see like a different approach.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's see how other guys Exactly. That's very true. That's very, very true. Yeah, exactly. So that's been the whole session I think that we've had with Danny. So yeah. So now we're here. So thanks a lot, Danny. I guess we'll have another one very, very soon.
I hope so. That was fun. So I
So
love actually reviewing
let me
that.
stop right.
And hope like the viewers are
Yeah. So let me
for the last 2 hours.
yeah, I will probably see if I can bring it down like further and just like see how can we have them there, you know. So
Maybe
let
they
me
have
stop
maybe
recording
the
first.
first 15 minutes where
Yeah.
we are still downloading Gradle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, those that we'll definitely have to cut those because then someone will be looking at it like, are these guys serious that they are putting us here? Like I love some YouTube comments where someone says like, oh yeah, thanks for wasting the last 6 minutes of my life watching how Gradle is building.
I think we filtered really well, like explaining something.
You know.
It's like emotion action. It's
Exactly.
life, right? Perfect. Then
Very true. Yeah. So yeah, cool. No problem. I will talk to you